If you'd like to learn how to make your own grappling hook to allow your players to get to all the high places in your game with a single script, keep watching and I'll show you exactly how to do it. Welcome to Roblox Snippets. Alright, we're going to make a grappling hook. Now I have one here in the workspace. I got it from up here from the toolbox, went in there to search for a grappling hook and picked one that I liked to use. Now when you get it into the workspace like this over here, the only thing we really need inside of this tool part here is the part called handle. Now the handle part may have a mesh inside of it, which represents how this looks, and leave that in there. So handle with the mesh and this, delete everything else out, so no scripts or sounds or anything like that, just have it looking like this. And once you have that tool, we're ready to make use of it in the game. So we can right click on it and come up to cut and then scroll down to our starter pack, right click on it and paste into. Alright, this might appear, don't worry about that too much. And let's give it a quick play and see how it presents. Alright, I'm loaded in the game and you'll see I have a hook tool down the bottom here, and if I left click on that, it brings it up in front of me. Now if yours is not aligning correctly like this, it might be upside down or whatever, you will need a plug-in, so I'll just stop that there. And the one that I use is Tool Grip Editor by Ego Moose. Really good, easy to use, if you're going to use it, use Z to change between the move and the rotate tool. So a quick tip there. Alright, so now that we have a tool to work with, let's add in a couple of, or a platform that our player will be able to use their grappling hook on to get up higher. So come up to home and we're going to just simply add a part in. You don't need to do anything too special with this at the moment. You can change its color if you like. I'm going to make mine a green and also make it neon so that it glows and sticks right out, and we'll come down and we will change unanchored to true. I've made that bricks for some reason there. Hang on a second. There we go. We'll leave it at neon. There we go. Alright, so we have this part now that we've added into the workspace. Go ahead and change the name of that part to be platform part. So you can name this something different if you wish. However, we're using it in code and it's going to refer to any platform that we can attach our grappling hook to. So throughout your project, you would need to use the same name if you wanted the grappling hook to work. So that's just something to note. Alright, now with that we have a tool and we have a platform which we can obviously duplicate and place it in different areas. So we're ready to get started and we're going to be working with our tool down here. So come down to the starter pack and we'll just expand it and you'll see that we have the handle in here. However, in the tool itself, so left click on the tool, click on the plus and add in a local script. And we'll call this, whoops, don't want to change the name of that one. We'll call this hook tool local, so we're clear on where we're working. And we'll get rid of hello world. Okay, so just before we start coding, we need to add a couple more things to our hook tool and to our platform, because what we're going to do is create a rope and it will attach to the tool and it will then attach at the other end to the platform. So we need to have attachments in both of these. So in this case, we don't want the attachment to go in the tool itself, we want it to go in the handle. So left click on the handle of the tool, click on plus, and if you don't see attachment here, start typing it in the search box, and when you see it pop up, left click on it. And then come up to the platform part in the workspace and we're going to do the same thing. So click on plus, start typing attachment and then left click to add it in. Now each of these need to have a unique name. So the one that we just did in platform part, if you click on it once and then a second time, right at the very end we want to add a number 1. So no space and then hit enter. Then we're going to go down to our hook tool and find the attachment in the handle and click on it. And this one will be a 0. So make sure it's a number 0 and not a capital O. And when you've done that, you can click enter and we have setup ready. So we should have platform part with attachment 1 and our hook tool handle with an attachment 0 inside of it here. Okay, so now we'll have a look. We might create our rope constraint because all of the code will focus on these things so we don't have to break away. So on your hook tool, click on it and then click on the plus, and we're going to start typing rope, and you should see these two constraints come up. So go ahead and click on rope constraint to add it into the hook tool, and then when you left click on it, you can see down the bottom here what its properties are. So change its color by all means. I've made mine about 0.5 thickness so that we can clearly see it in the game, and clicked on visible here as well. And then if we move down the rest, it's fairly straightforward. Now there are some behaviors in here like active and things. Don't touch any of those just at the moment. Do however make sure it's enabled. And the only attachment that we want to make just at the moment, see this attachment 0 here? I would like you to left click in the box next to it and you should get this little Lego icon floating around on your mouse. And then come up to our, sorry, we don't have to go anywhere. Click on the attachment 0 inside of the tool. So we've now set this attachment is now attached to one end of this rope. Now the other end we're going to do in code, so we don't need to worry about that. However, let's just go down through the length here again. Let's make our length 10 and we'll set the restitution to 1. So if you move your mouse over, it'll tell you how elastic it is. So we want it to be a little bit springy, but once again, you can use that. The winch, we don't need to make use of that. Alright, so once you have those sort of settings in, none of them are super crucial apart from this attachment 0. So make sure that you have clicked on that and then on the attachment 0 under the handle. Alright, and we're ready to go. Alright, so we have this local script inside of our tool. Now this script will end up being quite long and big because we're dealing with a lot of things going on inside of here, and one of the main ones that you'll probably want to deal with is actually dealing with the tool itself. So we'll start there and we'll create a variable for the tool. So we can just call it tool here and it will be equal to script.parent. Right below that, we're going to create two separate functions. So a local function, and the first one will be tool equip, and then drop down below that and create another one, local function tool unequip. Let's get rid of that. Alright, so now tools, this funny little symbol up here is a class of its own, and it has built-in methods that help it identify when a tool is equipped and unequipped, and we're going to make use of them below these two function calls here by saying tool dot and then equipped. And you'll see we get this little lightning bolt come up here, and that shows that this is triggering. Okay, something's happening where the player's clicking on something and it is making this run. So that's how it works, and we connect to it when that signal comes through the function up the top, so tool equip. So notice that it doesn't have any brackets on the end, it's just the name, so we want it just like that. Now right below that we will also add unequipped. Alright, same thing. So it's a signal and then we connect, and this time we want to run tool unequip. Right, inside of each of these we can put a print statement and say tool equipped, double P there, and print, I'll say put tool away. So that's the basic starting block of making use of a tool. So let's play and we'll see how that runs. Okay, so I'm all loaded in. I have my hook tool down here, and if I click on it with my output window open down here, you'll see it says tool equip, and if I put it away, we put the tool away, and that will work over and over again as many times as we take it out or put it away. So if yours is working like that, go ahead and stop, and we can start to flesh this out a bit. Alright, now we've got a tool here, and it's not serving a great deal of purpose. This, even in this entire script, it will actually change a variable for us, but in your project you may want to do more inside of here once you get this working. So I've left this section in here so that we can make use of it. Now if we have a quick look at the workspace, we're going to use raycasting to find out what the mouse is looking at. So when you move your mouse over a part like this, you'll see it turns into a hand. So that's a form of raycasting where the mouse being over this has recognized this part, and it's telling the program what it is and etc. So color and all that sort of thing. So we're going to set up our own version in here to look for our platform parts. Alright, now we'll have to set up a couple of variables and functions in order for this to work. So up the very top, you'll notice that I've put in some comments here to separate things out. I'd encourage you to do the same thing if you're a beginner, and just so that you're aware of what's going on. So up the top here, we'll create another comment called services, and we're going to create a couple of services here. So local, first one will be run service, so rs equals game get service and the run service. Run service lets us run or make use of its function of continually running to run functions very quickly, so every frame. And as we're dealing with the mouse, that's a user input, so we'll say a local UIS for user input service equals game get service and user input service. Alright, now down below our functions here for our tool, and in actual fact I might just put another comment here and put some lines across like this, and this sort of just lets us separate things so we can see clearly where we're working. Right, doesn't affect the code in any way. So we've got these two services. Now down below our tool section here, as I've created, we're going to set up to make use of our run service initially. Right, so just above where we've got our tool events, we're going to type rs and stepped, and you'll see fires every frame. So it's going to run very quickly to do our checks, and we'll connect a function to this, and it should look like this. All right. Now we want to run a function inside of this, so we'll need to create one, and we'll do that right above where we're working right now. So just drop down a couple of lines, and this function is going to create a raycast, and then we will call it many times one after the other. So a local function create raycast, and now before we move on, we'll set up down the bottom here and put a call in here, because this is where we want to actually make use of it. So grab a copy of the name of the function and put it down here in stepped. Alright, so at the moment, every frame it's running this empty function. Just imagine that in your head. Now to create a raycast, it makes use of, as I said, our mouse position, and our mouse position comes from the user input service. So inside of here, we're going to say local mouse position equals user input service, and then get mouse position, or location, sorry. And that will return us an X and a Y location of the mouse in this two-dimensional frame in our screen. And now we'll create a part of, well, when we create a raycast, it will need some information. So here we'll create a variable called raycast, and now a raycast makes use of, from our mouse, it makes use of the camera in the game to work out how far something is away. So up the very top here under our variables, let's drop down under here and we'll create one called camera, and it will be workspace.current camera. So it'll grab whichever one's in the workspace and make use of that to create our raycast. Then down here we can say camera and viewport point to ray. Okay, it's a long-winded method, all right? But you can read here, creates a unit ray from our position, etc., etc. And so we're going to give it the information that we currently have, which is our mouse position.x, and then a comma, and our mouse position.y. So now we've got the instructions basically in that variable, we can actually create a raycast, and it will return to us a result. So we'll say RC for raycast result will be equal to workspace, and a colon raycast. So now we're actually casting the ray, and it requires a couple of bits of information. So the origin, we can now type raycast.origin and then a comma, raycast.direction. And the last one here, we're going to multiply this, so add a star, by 200. Now this will represent up to 200 studs, so you can make this 20 or 2000, whatever. You can change this a bit later, but this will work up to 200 studs away, getting a raycast. And all we have to do then is return this raycast result. Now you might say, well, what are we returning it to? Now remember, it's coming down here, so we need to create a variable so we can look at what this result is that it's being returned to. So down here we will create a local result, and it's going to equal this raycast. So this is running, it'll return it here, and we will get whatever the mouse is over. Now we only really want to look at whether it is instances, so things that we can change or make use of in the game. So we'll say if result and result dot instance then, and we're going to create a variable in here that will be used throughout this code. So up the very top under our variables, create a variable called item and set it to nil. And down the bottom, back in our result, we'll say item equals result dot instance. So effectively that variable up the top here, whenever we use it in our code now, will become whatever instance that the mouse is over. Now we can give this a test by coming up to, or we can just do it down the bottom here, and put in a print statement and say item.name for a start. It will give us a lot of other information, but we'll just see what we're looking at. So when you've done that, open your output window down the bottom, so I can see if we get any errors, and we'll give it a run. Alright, so I'm in the game, and you'll see immediately down the bottom in my output that it is registering. If I move over the spawn location, it's doing that, and if I move over this platform part, it's bringing up its name. Okay, so that's what we want our code, or we want to see our code doing, running these print statements over and over with whatever we're on. Now if I move over myself, you'll see it's picked up the handle in my character, and I don't know, upper torso. There you go. See, so you can pick up all sorts of things using raycasting. Alright, so now we will fine-tune that to work with the user input service, so I'll stop it there, to make it do the things that we want it to do. Okay, so now we have a raycast that's floating around from our mouse, telling us which parts are being clicked on. Now we want to get, when the user actually clicks on the part, make use of the user input service to capture that and then decide what we're going to do with it. And that we're looking at this platform part, which I just noticed there. You'll see I made a typo in the name, and that's probably going to cause us problems. So happens to the best of us. Make sure your names are correct when you are working. All right. So down the bottom, you'll notice I have commented these to name these functions so it's a little bit clearer. You'll see I've got the run service events down the bottom. Now we're going to create our user input just above where we are using the run service here. So just drop down a couple of lines below this function and we're going to make use of it here. Right, so user input service, if we type that and then a dot, and we're going to use input began. Now input began is an event that happens when any sort of input, mouse buttons or keys being pressed, etc., and it captures all of it, and then we want to put a colon and connect a function to this, and just move outside and drop down. However, we're going to come back up to the parameters of the function, and it takes two. If you look here, it needs the input, which we can simply pass in as input. As I said, that is anything that is being input from the user, and comma, this game processed event, a boolean, so true or false, and we're going to call this one busy. So what busy it means is if a player is in chat typing away, but in your game you have a input of, say, press G on the keyboard to do something, it won't trigger when they are typing in chat. That's what this boolean handles. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So now we've got some input coming in, so the user has done something. Now we need to decide, well, what type of input is that? So we'll create a conditional statement. So if input, so what we're passing in, dot user input type. So if you look at it, describes the kind of input, mouse, keyboard, etc., just like I just said. And if that equals enum dot user input type dot, and these are all the ones you can use, but we're going to use mouse button 1, which is your left mouse button, then that means that the user is clicking on the mouse button. But we also need to make use of the busy by saying and not busy. Then, so if I close that so you can see, this whole line means that they are in the game playing and they're pressing the mouse button, and so we want to run that code in here. All right. Now the next thing that we want to know is, once they press the button, what is it that they're actually clicking on? So remember up the top, or just down here where we've got item, we're sending that up to the top. So now we're going to check whether what they're clicking on is actually this item. So if item.name equals, and now make use of the name just like I corrected just before, platform part, so it needs to be exactly like that, platform part, then. So now if they click the mouse button and it is on the platform part, we're going to run this code. However, if you think about it, we're using a tool here, so this code could run if it's not equipped. So if the player was to click up in on the platform part when they've got the hook away, it would still run. So for that reason, come up to our variables up the top here, and we'll create a new variable called is equipped, and we'll set it to false. And then right below that, we should have our tool, and we're going to make use of this to change this variable in here. So I will get rid of these print statements, and when we equip the tool, we want to say is equipped equals true, and when we put it away, is equipped will be equal to false. And that way we can easily keep track of in our code of when the tool is equipped or not. So back down in our input, if item name equals platform part, and so both of these need to be true, not is equipped. So if this is true and this is true, they've got the hook out and they're on the right part, we can execute our code in here. So let's add a print statement in here to say, whoops, fire the hook. So that means it should be working. And any other time they click on any other part or etc., we'll say warning down here, equip the hook. All right, so a warning will show up in the down the bottom here in our output window as an orange sort of statement. So if you've got it looking like this, let's get rid of that so you can check, then give it a save and let's play, and we'll just give that a test. Alright, so I'm in the workspace, and you can see down the bottom in my output window down here that whatever I'm moving over is indeed showing the name. Now if I click on the spawn point, alright, then it says equip the hook, and then goes back to spawn location, the name. If I click on the base plate, it's the same thing. Now I don't have the tool equipped. If I move over the platform part and left click, it's still saying equip the hook. All good. So now come back over the hook tool and equip it, and click on the part, and now you should see that it went by fairly quickly, but fire the hook. Alright, so if I keep clicking there and then move this up a bit, you'll see we've got fire the hook, etc. Alright, so that is what you are looking for. It should only show you fire the hook when the tool is equipped and you click on this part. If that is all working for you, come up and stop, and we will move on to the next part. Okay, now we know we have it working where we're clicking the right part and the hook is equipped. Now we want to tie things together and start to make use of the other things we haven't talked about, such as the rope and the attachments, to make it all work. So we can comment out fire the hook just for now, and we're going to write our code in here. Now the first thing we would like to get a hold of, if I open up our Explorer window and look down here, is our rope constraint. So scroll up to the top of our script under variables, and we'll create a variable here, local rope will equal script.parent.rope constraint, because remember we're running the script here inside the tool, so we can just grab it straight away. Now we need to determine, if I come in, you don't have to do this, but if I just import my own avatar here, because it's important to have a think about these things sometimes. Right, so here I am over here, and say I've got my tool equipped and I shoot a rope out to here. We need to determine how far is it from the player to this part so we can set the length of the rope. Alright, so that's what we need to determine. Otherwise we could have a 200 stud rope and it's just laying on the ground, or it's not long enough. Alright, so back in our code, we can do that down here in our conditional statement. So just under where we said fire the hook, we're going to say rope.length. Okay, so that's one of the properties. If you actually click on it over here in the Explorer window and scroll down through here, length, we've currently got it set to 10. So we're going to determine that length by saying equals, and we'll open a set of brackets, and inside of here we now need to calculate between the character themselves and the position of the item, but we don't have that character yet. So let's come up to the top and create a couple more variables for us to use. So under variables, we're going to say local player, so PLR for short, will be equal to the game.players, and .local player. Next we want the character, so local character will equal workspace, and we will find first child the player.name. Now once we found that character in the workspace, we then will want to know about its humanoid and its humanoid root part. So local humanoid will equal character and then a colon, and we'll say find first child humanoid and local. Now we'll get the humanoid root part, so HRP, which will be equal to character find first child humanoid root part. So make sure your spelling is correct there. Now if you by chance do get any errors around humanoids etc., you could change this to wait for child. I don't think it should happen, but if it does, change these lines to wait for child instead of find first child. Alright, so we've got our variables up the top to handle the current character in the workspace. So if we come back down here, we were working on rope.length, and we needed to get the position of the humanoid root part, which we can now do. So inside of these brackets, we'll say humanoid root part dot position, And then we want to subtract item.position. Now remember, item should be this platform part here. Once we do that, we'll move outside and put a dot and type magnitude. Now if you haven't used magnitude before, basically it will subtract these two vector3 positions and then turn it into a single number that will return back here. So therefore the length between the humanoid root part and our platform part should be what we set the length of the rope to. So hopefully that makes sense. All right, the next line, now we're going to deal with the other attachment, and I'll just bring this up to show you. Remember, we've got the attachment 0 here, and it is set in the rope constraint. So just move up here a little bit. So the rope constraint is set to attachment 0, which is inside of the tool. All right, now we want to get this attachment and add it into this box. So that's what this next line will do. And we do that by saying the rope.attachment1 should equal the item, so the platform parts.attachment1. So the next thing is, how do we shorten the rope? Now there's a few options available that I've seen people try to use the winch in the rope and while loops and things. However, we're going to use a tween today. So we're going to create a tween that will shorten the length of the rope. Now if you haven't used tween service before, just follow along and you'll see it produces a nice smooth animation type event, I guess you could call it. So up the top here where we have our services, we're going to get a new service now. So drop down and we'll say local TS for tween service, game, get service, tween service. And we can now make use of that down the bottom here. So let's come back down to just below where we have our variables. Alright, so probably above these. At the end of the variables. So we'll drop down underneath our humanoid root part here, and we're going to create our tween here. So right here, tweening the rope length. So tweens take a couple of different bits of information. The first one being information about the tween itself, so how fast you want it to go, all those sort of things, and we can call that info. So we'll say local info equals and tween info. So just start typing that and it'll pop up in blue and then new, and you'll see that it should now ask you for all of these numbers inside. So I'm going to set the speed, or how quickly these two this will execute, to 0.5 of a second. Okay, so fairly quickly. And then we add a comma, and we need to add these other things in. So the next one will be enum.easing style, and we will just leave it what it pops up on as linear, and then enum.easing direction dot, and leave it as in out, and add a comma. Do we want it to repeat? No, so we will say false. And does it reverse? And we'll say false. So actually this asks for a number here, not false, I'm sorry. So we'll just put here 0. Alright, and that should give us everything we need to make our tween look correct. And I'll just get rid of that so you can see it is a bit of a long line. And to make it easier to see, I'll separate it by the commas here. So after each comma, I'll just drop down so you can read it clearly. But this will all work exactly as it should, like this. Okay, and I can zoom back in there again. Alright, so that's what you want it to look at. So info, tween info, 0.5, comma, etc, etc. Once you have that, then below this we're going to create an empty table called goal, which equals a set of squiggly brackets. And into this table, we're going to give it the length that we actually want to make the length, all right? Or what length is it that we want the rope to constrict to or shorten to. And through testing, I've come up with about 2. All right, could be shorter, could be longer if you wish, but this will reel it in till it's about 2 studs long, which should be close enough for us to finish off getting up onto the ledge. All right, now that we have that in place and we're ready to make use of this tween, we'll come back down to the bottom where we were writing our input script here, and just below the attachment, now we're going to add onto this particular item, this platform part, a touch event that will move our character up on top of it when the player actually contacts it. So we say item.touched, and we will connect function and add hit in here. Alright, now we only want this to run the once, so we can just right above where we've added this touched function, we'll create a local db for debounce, and we're going to set it to true. So now we can just make use of that to make sure this runs just the once. So if db, then, alright, we'll set db equal to false, and that will be it. That's all we're going to do. We don't need to set it back to true. All right. Now the next thing that we'll do, well, we do, but I'll show you how to do that. I think. No. We only want this to run once, so we'll just set that to be false, and then it won't run again. Next thing, we're going to move the humanoid root part up on top of the item. So we'll say the humanoid root part dot cframe will equal the item dot cframe. So that's the platform part plus vector3 dot new, and we'll put in here 0, comma, and the humanoid dot hip height. So hip height, comma 0. So that will make sure it moves the character up on top of this part, right? And the last thing that we need to do in here, because they've reached their destination, we're going to set rope.attachment1 equal to nil. So that will clear the box for the rope for the next time you run it. Now, right below this if statement, so on the end, you'll see we have a set of curly brackets here, and then this else statement. All right. So at the end of this bracket here, just hit enter once, and now we're going to create our tween here. So local tween will equal the tween service and a colon, and then create. And it's asking us for what is it that we actually want to tween. Well, it's the rope. And now it's asking us for some info. And lastly, it wants to know what properties do you want to change, and that is our goal table. All right, and that's all we need to do. Now, so that it sort of looks like the rope, or give the rope time for it to reach the part and then contract, we're going to put a task.wait of, say, 0.2 seconds, and then we will play the tween. So that's just about all the code we need. We just need to make a couple of adjustments. If we come into the workspace, you'll notice that I have moved my platform part up in the sky, so go ahead and do that so that we've got something to shoot for. And then up the top under view, make sure that you have your output window open down the bottom so we can check for errors. And with that, you can give it a save, and we will play. And now I'm leaving this in the video, but this shows an error, and I'll show you how to fix this type of error. So it's saying the rope constraint is not a valid member of the tool. So if I stop the game running and I bring up under view our Explorer window, you'll see that it really is. The problem is that it's because it's in a local script and this is loading for the character, this hasn't had time enough to appear yet, so it's throwing an error. So the way to fix that is we will get rid of this last part here, the .rope constraint, and put in a wait for child with inverted commas and then type in rope constraint. Save it and give it another run, and that should fix that problem. Alright, so I'm in the game running, it did fix that problem, and you'll see up the top here, if I tilt back up like this and click on the platform, nothing's happening because it's not equipped. So I'll come down and equip the hook tool now and click on the platform, and he jumps straight up on top of it. Alright, so if I fall down and do it again, same thing. Alright, now there are a few adjustments. You'll notice that he will always face that way, but you can make adjustments to it. But he shoots up there nice and smoothly. So look, I really hope you enjoyed that video and that everything works for you, and I look forward to seeing you in future videos. If you found this video useful, subscribe now. For more information about my online courses, go to mrbrendanross.com.